Scene Mom says, welcome to the new podcast from former Phoenix radio host Danny Cutler. Each week bringing you independent music, industry news, the occasional interview, and other fun segments. Let's get to it. Scene Mom says hello and welcome to episode 64. I'm Danny, your host and Scene Mom, and as always, I'm so glad that you joined me. Hope everybody had a good week. I had another week of just keeping that nose to the proverbial grindstone. I did attend a few events. I did go to a food truck festival that also had a battle of the bands that was hosted by our town. It was pretty neat. So many food trucks and vendors out there. Plus the bands were pretty good too. Our Community Action Committee received a $50,000 grant from T-Mobile to support the hub in town. They're going to expand it and literally make it a central hub for gathering, entertainment, supporting our youth, and providing food and assistance to those who need it. It's a great place already, so I've seen the plans for what they're going to do, and I'm excited on many, many levels. I had my social media presentation there back at the end of May, and they already have the bowling alley going again, but the expansion, it's going to be amazing. I said this on Facebook, but I'll say it here too. Winchendon is scoffed at a lot and considered backwoods, and people like to call it Winchentucky, usually from those who live east of us as you go towards Boston. But I've been here almost 2 years now. 2 years. Oh my God. And it is not what I see at all when I'm out in our community. I love it here. And the support of the community is right up there with any major city. Businesses continue to open, new homes being built. People are buying those homes. It is quite the place. Another thing I did is I went to a ribbon cutting for my friend Magnus and his Wachusett Business Incubator. They just opened a new space in Gardner, and it is absolutely beautiful. I work with the incubator to provide free consultations and social media analysis for businesses. It has just been a great way to get to know the area and the business better. So congratulations to the Business Incubator on an awesome new space. All right, enough about me. Let's get back to the show. Music news is, of course, coming up along with music history, your marketing tip, and I have a good news story for you, especially if you grew up with the kids show Blue's Clues, either as a child or a parent. I have plenty of indie tunes for you as well, and we're going all over the place with the selections this week, and not one of them are from Phoenix or Boston. Yay! I mean, I love Phoenix and Boston music, but I like to expand. I want to expand. There's independent music all over the globe, so the more I get from different places, the better. So let's get back to this music and head to Atlanta, Georgia. This is Improvement Movement, who just dropped a new EP called My Team. This is called The Knife, and you're listening to What Scene Mom Says.
Nobody told you in life that the sharper the knife Driver picks the music, shotgun shuts his cake hole.
You're listening to the Scene Mom Says podcast. It's now time for some music news.
Starting off our music news, we have Instagram. They have just launched an exciting update. It now lets users share Spotify tracks in their stories with 15-second audio previews that actually play directly within the app. Previously, as I'm sure a lot of you know, shares only showed a silent preview with a link, forcing followers to leave Instagram and open Spotify if they wanted to listen. Now, the upgrade transforms music sharing using this passive visual cue, and it makes it a little more immersive. Followers can now hear a snippet of the song, and it just helps with music discovery and boosting engagement, and you don't have to leave the app, which is what Instagram wants. It really is a clever move because they're trying to rival TikTok in music trends, especially because they keep pushing the sale or banning of TikTok out like every 90 days. They push it out another 90 days. You still just don't know what's going to happen with it. So if you want to use it, you just share on any Spotify track, and when you choose Instagram stories, it puts the album art and the 15-second playable clip that plays instantly as you're scrolling through Instagram stories. And you can still customize it and make it all cute with stickers and text and all that. So you all know how that works if you've used Instagram stories. So it just makes it a little bit easier to share music. So the whole thing is just part of Instagram's strategy to deepen its music integration and amplify the social sharing experiences. So it builds on earlier features like Spotify previews in notes and music sticker interactions, but they want to be more than just images and captions. They want to be more of a dynamic music discovery platform like TikTok. We'll see how that goes. I'm glad they're doing it. I mean, it's a smart move for sure, especially when, like I said, we don't know what's going to happen with TikTok. All right, going up to Canada, Quebec City has introduced a new rule requiring street performers or buskers in two key areas of Old Quebec to sing only in French or perform instrumental music. The change, which is tied to the 40th anniversary of the district's UNESCO World Heritage status, is meant to highlight and preserve the city's French cultural identity. However, some buskers say the policy is a little unfair and it limits their artistic freedom, especially since these are the most lucrative spots for performers. Critics argue the rule discriminates against non-French and indigenous language artists, while supporters view it as a celebration of local heritage. So that's interesting. I have never seen a ban on the language or making it one language only rule in art. It just doesn't make sense to me, but hey, I don't know how things work up there. All right, in other news, in a landmark ruling last week, U.S. District Judge William Alsup determined that Anthropic's use of copyrighted books to train its AI model, Claude, constituted fair use, defining the process as exceedingly transformative. akin to a writer learning by reading, not simply copying. The court found that because Claude generates original content rather than reproducing full passages, the use of legally purchased and scanned books fell within fair use boundaries, offering a major judicial win for AI developers. However, the judge also ruled that Anthropic's earlier practice of downloading over 7 million pirated books from platforms like LibGen did not qualify as fair use. The distinction means Anthropic must now face a trial to assess damages related to its pirated library practices, although acquiring print copies afterwards may reduce the penalties. The split decision sets kind of a weird precedent. AI companies can lawfully train on copyrighted text if sourced legitimately and used in a transformative way, but cannot build models on illegally obtained materials. As further lawsuits unfold, the ruling marks a potential tipping point in defining how intellectual property law applies to generative AI. Now, why am I talking about this? And it's music news. The ruling is important for musicians because it shows how courts may treat copyrighted creative work like music when it's used to train AI. I just talked about Timbaland taking an indie track and using it for his own AI a couple of episodes ago. So if using copyrighted books for AI training can be considered fair use, similar arguments could be applied to music. So that means AI companies could potentially use songs without permission or compensation to train music generating models, as long as the end product is considered, quote, original or, quote, transformative. For musicians, it does raise questions about ownership, licensing, and how their work might be repurposed without payment or control. And it suggests that legal protections may depend more on how the data was sourced rather than whether the artist consents. So understanding the shifts is really crucial for musicians if you're advocating for fair treatment and compensation, as AI obviously is just going to become more and more popular. And I know I've been talking about AI a lot these past few weeks, but it is really important. And as independent musicians, your work and how your work is protected matters. I'm not anti-AI, but I am anti-theft and using work without permission. And these legal challenges really blur the lines on what that means. So really important stuff there. So that's your music news this week. So if you have any feedback or other thoughts, you can email me at scenemomsays@gmail.com. from Nashville, that was Sour Ops with Be My Secret. Remember that all band links will be in the show notes. Please go and follow them on all the things and stream and purchase their music. Scene Mom says it's time for some music history. On June 29th in 1969, bassist Noel Redding announced his departure from the Jimi Hendrix Experience, citing creative differences and growing frustration. His exit marked a turning point for the band, which would soon dissolve and reform with a new lineup. On July 1st in 1969, British composer Cornelius Cardew helped form the Scratch Orchestra, an experimental music collective that included non-musicians and future pioneers like Brian Eno. It challenged traditional performance norms and influenced the development of ambient and avant-garde music. On July 3rd, also in 1969, popular year this week, founding Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones was found dead in a swimming pool at age 27. His death added to the mythos of the 27 Club and ended a significant chapter in the band's early blues-driven era. And on July 4th, in 1995, Dave Grohl released the first Foo Fighters album, recorded almost entirely by himself after the end of Nirvana. What started as a solo project quickly grew into a full band and, as we know, one of the most enduring acts in alternative rock. And on July 5th, in 1954, at Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee, a young Elvis Presley laid down his first single, That's All Right. The session is widely considered the birth of rock and roll, and it launched Presley's rise as a cultural icon. And that is some music history for you this week. from Lyon, France. That was Hyperstereo with Runners off their new EP, The Lights Around. I discovered them through Spotify releases, which happen every Friday. At least in the music discovery department, Spotify still has a bit of purpose. Scene Mom says it's time for your marketing tip of the week. Move your budget to radio and podcast ads. I know I have talked about doing this many times over the years, but now Odyssey Inc. has some great insight when it comes to how people listen in their vehicles. The latest study found that drivers don't just listen passively. They engage, they search, and they act. In fact, here are some stats. After hearing an ad on AM/FM radio, 56% looked up the advertiser, 53% talked about the product with family and friends, and 41% made a purchase. And podcast ads perform just as much. 50% searched for more info, 47% discussed the brand, and 49% ended up making a purchase. So that is the full funnel. It's awareness, consideration, and conversion activated by the single audio touch point. It's more direct marketing than on social media, where, as Gary Vee puts it, it's becoming more interest media rather than social media. You need to reach people who are actually going to respond and purchase what you're selling. Musicians, your music and shows is what you're selling. Now, I will have a link in the show notes to this study. It's an important one to revisit and remold your marketing plans around. And as always, if you want to chat more about marketing and promoting your music or your brand, you can schedule a consultation with me at dannycutler.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter or even the private Facebook group as well. And you get all kinds of fun things there because I try and have fun when I do this stuff. I have all the links for you in the show notes. We went across the big pond again to London. That was world news and don't want to know. C-Mom says now it's time for some good news this week. If you grew up watching Blue's Clues, I can't even say it, or if you were a parent like me who had their children watching Blue's Clues, Steve Burns, the beloved original star of the show, is launching a brand new podcast for adults called Alive, which is debuting this fall. The weekly series aims to be a continuation of the clue-following, curiosity-driven spirit that he brought to the show, this time guiding grown-ups through real-life challenges. Now, Burns describes Alive as a special kind of podcast that listens back, much like how Steve on Blue's Clues would ask questions and then wait for kids to call out answers. The format will be conversational, reflective, and inclusive, inviting listeners to share their thoughts. Topics will span personal finance, spirituality, relationships, navigating adulthood. Still fun, but tackling these complex issues more than, a talking armchair ever did. Now age 51, Burns has reconnected with his original audience, who are now adults, through TikTok videos that check in emotionally and address important issues. In recent years, Burns has also bravely shared the impact of the persistent rumor that he died, which was a false urban legend that really affected his mental health following his departure from the show. If you're curious to explore this whole new adulthood with this familiar, nostalgic, caring guide, Alive could be the podcast for you when it launches this fall. I tell you, number one, I couldn't believe that he was 51. I thought he was younger, at least maybe late 30s to in his 40s somewhere. I didn't realize he was just 2 years younger than me, but I loved the show as much as my kids did. But it's just a nice feel-good story for you, and I'm looking forward to hearing the podcast.
I'm not superstitious, but there's something in the air. I feel the energy, the signs are everywhere. The evening's calling me, but I ignore the phone.
back here in the States, that was Sioux City, South Dakota artist Blake Rave with his latest single called After Midnight. And that is it for episode 64. Links to all the music and news you heard this week will, of course, be in the show notes. And if you have any feedback or thoughts or anything you'd like to share, you can always get in touch on social media at Scene Mom Says on Facebook and D Cutler AZ everywhere else. And you can email scenemomsays@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, please share the love. I am also an independent artist. Thank you, as always, for listening, and you will hear me again soon. You've been listening to the Scene Mom Says podcast. Intro-outro music is Look Good for the Radio by Fairy Bones. Learn more about Danny and the show at dannycutler.com.